I'll start this by saying something I've never really admitted out loud before. Something I've carried since I was 9, and something I still think about whenever I walk past a playground at night. I once heard someone breathing under me. Not beside me, not behind me, under me. And the worst part was, I think they were waiting. I didn't understand it at the time. I just knew that something was wrong. So wrong that even now, as a grown man, I get a tightness in my chest whenever I remember that night. I've had nightmares about it for years. It happened during a summer when my mom worked late shifts at a small clinic near our house. I was too young to stay home alone, so she usually dropped me off at my aunt's place after school. But on that particular day, my aunt had to leave unexpectedly, and my mom still had another 3 hours before she could pick me up. So I walked to the old park 2 blocks away, the one with the rusted swings and the big wooden playground structure that creaked even when no one was on it. The place kids always said was haunted, even though they couldn't explain why. I got there around 6:15 p.m., right as the sun was dipping low and the sky turned that deep blue that makes everything look colder. A few younger kids were still playing, but their parents were calling them in. The air smelled like cut grass and warm metal. I remember the sound of cars passing on the far road, and the faint hum of the streetlights warming up. I didn't feel scared then. Just bored. Lonely, maybe. I climbed onto the wooden platform at the center of the playground. The one with the slide attached. It was the highest spot, so I could sit there and see everything. The wood was old and splintered, but I liked the way it felt under my legs. Solid, familiar. When the last kid left, the whole park went quiet in a way I wasn't used to. Not silent, just empty. Like the sound of people was supposed to be there, and without it, the place felt wrong. I remember pulling my backpack closer to me, hugging it to my chest. That was when I first heard it, a faint tap under the platform, light, slow, deliberate. I froze. At first I told myself it was just the wood shifting. Old playgrounds do that all the time. But then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Not random, not accidental, like someone was touching the underside of the platform with a finger. I leaned forward a little, listening. The hairs on my arms stood up. The wood vibrated slightly with each tap. I whispered, "Hello?" That's when the tapping stopped. I should have run, I know that now. Hell, I knew it then too, deep down. But I was a kid, curious, stupid, thinking I could understand something that wasn't meant to be understood. I slowly crawled toward the edge of the platform and peered down through the gaps in the wooden floorboards. It was dark under there, almost pitch black. The tiny slivers of light that slipped through barely touched the ground. I squinted, trying to make out shapes. At first, I saw nothing. Then, I heard it, a breath. Slow, wet, shaky. Someone was directly under me. I jerked back instinctively, my heart slamming in my chest. It wasn't the kind of sound an animal makes. This was human, too human. Someone was lying down there, pressed right against the bottom of the platform, breathing up at me. I scrambled to my feet, but the wood creaked loudly, and the breathing immediately changed. It got faster, more deliberate. And then I heard a shift, like whoever was below me was adjusting themselves. I think that's when I realized they knew I was alone. My mouth went dry. I thought about running again, but my legs felt like they were stuck in place. I kept trying to tell myself it was a homeless person sleeping there, or maybe someone hurt. Maybe they needed help. But that illusion shattered instantly when I heard something scrape along the wood beneath me, like nails dragging lightly across it, not a full drag. Just testing, feeling. Then a low whisper floated up through the cracks. "Still there." My whole body iced over. The voice was raspy, barely audible, but close, too close, as if the person's mouth was right below my shoes. I backed up slowly, trying not to make a sound, but the wooden floor betrayed me with every step. The breathing below me intensified. Then something moved fast. A hand, a pale, bony hand, shot up through one of the larger gaps between the planks. The fingers were long, dirt-stained, and they curled upward, trying to grasp at the air. or maybe at my ankle. I yelped and stumbled back so hard I fell onto my side. Pain shot through my hip, but adrenaline shoved me to my feet. I sprinted down the steps of the playground without looking back. I could still feel the eyes on me, though. I swear I could feel them. I reached the sidewalk and kept running, tears blurring my vision. When I finally stopped, I was nearly at the clinic where my mom worked. The building's lights made me feel safer, but only a little. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't tell my mom when she came out to meet me. I just hugged her and begged her not to make me go to my aunt's again. I think she assumed I'd gotten into a fight with someone. I let her believe that. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that hand reaching up through the floorboards, those long fingers, that whisper, that breath. 2 days later, I overheard something that made everything worse. My mom was talking to one of her coworkers in the kitchen while I sat in the living room, watching cartoons, trying not to think about the park. Her coworker said, "Did you hear about the guy they found sleeping under the playground on Maple Street? The one covered in dirt?" My mom gasped. "No, what happened?" "They said he'd been hiding there for days, watching kids. Some parents got freaked out and called the police." I remember my stomach dropping. My mom asked what the man looked like. The coworker said, "They didn't get a clear look. He ran before the cops arrived, but apparently he'd carved something under there. Words or symbols. They didn't say." I felt sick. I knew with absolute certainty that I had been inches away from him, that he had touched the wood beneath me, that he had whispered to me, that his hand had reached for me. But the worst part, the part that still fucks with me today, is something I didn't tell anyone when I fell fleeing the platform. Something had been left on my shoe, a smear, dark gray, like the color of ash or wet dirt. But mixed inside it were thin, pale strands of hair. I threw the shoes away that night. Years passed. I moved away, grew up, became an adult with adult problems. But sometimes in the dead quiet of a late night, like the ones where I record these stories, I hear that same breathing in the back of my mind. Slow, wet, shaky, like someone lying inches below me, like someone who never stopped waiting. And every time I walk past a playground, especially one made of wood, I feel that cold pressure in my chest again. The memory hits me so hard I have to look away, because sometimes I swear I can still hear that whisper following me. Still there? I've only told this story once, and even then, I kept most of it to myself. It's the kind of memory that sits in your body, not your mind. Like your bones remember it more than your thoughts do. I was 11 when it happened, and to this day, whenever I walk down a long hallway, especially in low light, I still get that same tightening in my throat that I felt when I was a kid, because I remember the bedroom, the one at the very end of the hall, the one I never should have gone into. Let me start at the beginning. When I was 11, my mother was dealing with a lot. Long shifts, money problems, just life in general. So she sent me to stay with my older cousin Daniel for a few weeks during the summer. He lived with my uncle in an older, creaky 2-story house outside of town, the kind where every sound echoes a little too long. I arrived there on a Friday afternoon. It was 4:12 p.m., I remember, because the clock in the living room was stuck at that time for years. The sun was pouring through the windows, hitting the dust in the air like glitter. The house smelled like old furniture and damp wood, a smell that felt harmless at the time, but later became something I couldn't forget. Daniel was 13 and always acted like a tough guy. We were close, but he wasn't exactly protective. If anything, he liked scaring me. The house didn't help. Long hallways, dim corners, and the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. The upstairs hallway was the worst. Long, narrow, yellowed wallpaper peeling at the corners. A single light bulb that flickered when the wind hit the house just right. At the very end of that hallway was a bedroom no one used. Not a guest room, not storage, just empty. The door was always closed, always locked except when it wasn't. and I learned that the hard way. My first night there, I slept in Daniel's room, which was across the hall from the locked bedroom. He stayed up late playing video games while I tried to fall asleep. The sounds from his game helped drown out the creaking of the house, at least until he shut it off and fell asleep. After that, the silence hit. Hard. Too hard. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to something that made my skin go cold. A soft creaking, slow and rhythmic, like someone shifting their weight on an old wooden floor. At first, I thought it was Daniel turning over, but when I looked at him, he was completely still. Then the creak came again, not from his room, from the hallway. I sat up listening. My heart started to race. Daniel's room had a small window that looked out onto the yard, and moonlight spilled in, casting pale blue shadows on the floor. The creaking grew louder, closer. I held my breath and strained to hear. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. The creaking wasn't the floor. It was a door hinge. A very slow, very deliberate door hinge. The door at the end of the hall. I slipped out of bed and crept to Daniel's doorway. My feet felt like lead. My whole body felt wrong, like I was walking into something I wasn't supposed to see. When I peeked into the hallway, the air felt colder, like the temperature dropped instantly. The single bulb flickered overhead, throwing the wallpaper into jagged shadows. And the door at the very end of the hall, the locked door, was open just an inch, just enough to see darkness inside. I froze. My mouth went dry. I knew that door was locked. I knew it. And now it wasn't. The house shifted slightly like a sigh passing through it, and the door creaked a little more. Opening another inch, I stepped backward, heart hammering, ready to wake Daniel. But something stopped me. A sound. A faint scraping noise from inside the room, like someone dragging something across the floor. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear. But the scraping continued. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. Something moving, or being moved. I whispered, "Daniel." Barely audible. He didn't wake. I swallowed hard and forced myself to look again. The door was now open about 3 inches. The room beyond it was pitch black, darker than the hallway should have allowed. And then, as if reacting to me watching, the scratching stopped. The silence that followed was thick. Too thick. I watched the darkness at the end of the hall, waiting for something, anything, to move. And then something did. A shape, a faint one, something low to the ground, shifting just inside the doorway. I didn't see details, just movement slow, crawling. I snapped back into Daniel's room and shook him hard. "Wake up! Daniel, wake up! Please!" He groaned. "What? What's your problem?" "The room," I whispered, pointing. The door opened. He looked annoyed, but when he saw my face, he actually got up. He stepped into the hallway, scratching his head. "What are you?" He stopped. The door was wide open now. Not 3 inches. Not slightly cracked. Wide. Open. The darkness inside looked wrong, like it swallowed the light instead of reflecting it. The air felt heavy, thick, like the hallway itself was holding its breath. Daniel stepped back into his room. He closed the door, locked it. Then he whispered, "Don't say anything." We sat awake until dawn, neither of us speaking. Every time the house creaked, we flinched. When morning came, Daniel finally explained something. Not everything, just enough to make me wish he hadn't. He said, "My dad doesn't go in that room. Nobody does. He says it's unsafe." "Unsafe how?" I asked. Daniel didn't answer. We ate breakfast in silence. My uncle barely spoke, just drank coffee and stared out the window like he was thinking about something far away. That afternoon, curiosity got the best of me, or maybe stupidity. While Daniel was outside, I walked upstairs. I crept down the hall, forcing myself forward even though every instinct screamed at me to turn around. When I reached the end of the hall, I saw 2 things that still haunt me. First, the door was closed again, but not locked. The latch was rusty and bent, as if it had been forced open. From the inside. Second, The bottom of the door frame had deep, fresh scratches in the wood. 5 lines, straight, parallel, about the width of someone's hand. No animal could have made them. I didn't tell Daniel what I saw. I didn't tell anyone. I just avoided that end of the hall for the rest of the visit. I'd run past it, even during the day, refusing to let my eyes drift toward that door. But on my last night, something happened that tightened the memory into a knot inside my chest that never fully loosened. I woke up around 3:11 a.m., not to a noise this time, but to a feeling, like someone was standing too close, watching. I looked at the doorway. The hall was dark, but not empty. A faint shape stood there, tall, still, just outside the room. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just watched and the figure didn't move, didn't shift. It just stood perfectly motionless, like a shadow that had decided to detach itself from the wall. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Then, without warning, the figure dropped low, fast, smooth, almost like a person squatting, but too fluid, too unnatural. It lowered itself until its head was level with the door handle. Then I heard it, a long, slow inhale, not like breathing, like smelling, like it was testing the air. I squeezed my eyes shut and pretended to sleep, praying, begging silently for it to go away. After what felt like an hour, though it was probably minutes, the air shifted again. Something in the hallway moved away. I didn't open my eyes again until morning. When my mom picked me up that day, I didn't look back at the house. Not once. I kept my focus straight ahead, pretending everything was normal. But when we got home, she asked me if I was okay. I told her I liked staying at Daniel's, because I didn't want her to worry or ask questions I couldn't answer. But that night, when I crawled into my own bed, the relief of being home should have calmed me. It didn't, because when I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that shadow in the doorway. I kept replaying the moment it lowered itself and breathed in, like it recognized me, like it remembered me, like it knew exactly who I was. Years later, I asked Daniel casually if he remembered anything strange about that house. He went quiet for a long time before finally saying, "We don't talk about the end room." I never asked again, but sometimes late at night when my hallway stretches out dark and quiet, I swear I hear a floorboard creak from the far end. Soft, slow, deliberate, and every single time, it feels like something is getting ready to crawl forward again. Before I get into this one, I need to say something I've never admitted publicly. Out of every childhood memory I carry, every fear, every strange moment, every gut-tightening experience, this is the only one I genuinely believe could have ended with me disappearing. It happened when I was 10, and even now, decades later, I still refuse to sleep with my bedroom door open, because I know what I heard that night, and I know it wasn't a dream. It started on a rainy Thursday evening, sometime in late September. My mom had picked up an extra shift at the clinic, so I was being watched by our longtime neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Hale. She was kind, stricter than my mom, but she meant well. I always felt safe in her house. But that night, safety wasn't anywhere near me. It was around 7:40 p.m. when the rain got heavier, not a soft, constant rain, more like sudden bursts, loud enough that every window in her house vibrated. The TV flickered occasionally from the storm, and every thunder rumble made the lights dim for a second. Mrs. Hale didn't like storms, so we mostly sat quietly in the living room, waiting for it to pass. Her house always felt old-fashioned. Floral wallpaper, squeaky wooden floors, heavy curtains that swallowed most of the outside light. Even the smell felt old, like a mix of lavender soap and closed windows. Around 8:25 p.m., she told me it was time for bed. The guest room I used was upstairs at the end of a short hallway. Small bed, wooden dresser, one window facing the street. The room always felt colder than the rest of the house, but I never complained. I changed into pajamas, crawled under the blankets, and listened to the rain hammering the window. Every gust of wind pushed against the frame, making it groan. My eyes were just starting to get heavy when I heard it. A knock. Soft. Slow. 3 taps. Knock. 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 It came from downstairs. At first, I wasn't even scared. People sometimes came by to check on Mrs. Hale, especially when storms got bad. She probably didn't hear it, I thought. But the knocking came again, this time a little louder. Knock, knock, knock. Something felt off. The knocks weren't urgent. They weren't asking for help. They were patient. Too patient. I sat up listening. Rain pounded the roof, wind howled against the siding, but the knocks were steady, perfectly spaced, like whoever was doing it wasn't bothered by the storm at all. Then I heard Mrs. Hale's footsteps, slow, steady, moving toward the front door. I relaxed a little, until the knocking stopped the second her footsteps got close. Not paused, not faded, stopped, instantly. Silence filled the house. I heard her unlock the deadbolt, open the door and say, "Hello?" in a confused voice. Nothing. She stood there for several seconds before closing the door again, locking it twice this time. I lay back down, heart settling. She'd handled it. Everything was fine, but 10 minutes later, the knocks came again. Only this time, they weren't at the front door. They were upstairs, right outside my door. My blood turned to ice. 3 knocks, soft, measured. Knock, knock, knock. I froze in my bed, eyes locked on the doorknob. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe. Nothing in the world moved except the shadows from the lightning flashing outside. Then came something worse. A voice, low calm, a man's voice, and it whispered my name through the door. Not loud, not threatening, just familiar, as if he already knew me. "Hey, it's me, open up." My lungs refused to work. The voice didn't sound confused or lost. It didn't sound like someone looking for help. It sounded certain, confident, expectant, like he knew I was alone in that room. I started to tremble under the blankets, praying for Mrs. Hale to come upstairs, but she didn't. The voice tried again. "Come on, open the door." Another knock followed, this time slightly harder. Knock, knock, knock. My throat tightened. I could hear the man's breath now. Slow, controlled, right on the other side of the wood. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the room for half a second. The doorknob didn't turn, but I saw its shadow shift, as if something was inches away from touching it. Then the voice whispered one word, one single word that ripped the air out of my chest. "Please." Not desperate, not begging, just patient, measured. Like he had all the time in the world, I finally found the strength to scream for Mrs. Hale. My voice cracked when it left my throat. "Mrs. Hale!" Silence, I screamed again. Louder, her footsteps thundered up the stairs. I heard her rushing down the hallway, calling my name, and as soon as she reached the top step, the knocking stopped completely, as if the man had vanished mid-breath. She burst into the room. Her hair was messy, her face pale with panic. She hugged me tight, asking over and over what happened, what I heard, why I screamed. I told her everything. The knocking, the voice, the man saying my name. She didn't doubt me, not even for a second. She walked me downstairs, keeping me close, and called the police. 2 officers arrived around 9:40 p.m., searching the house, the porch, the yard. They found nothing. Not footprints, not handprints. Not a single trace someone had been near the house. One officer suggested maybe I had a nightmare. Mrs. Hale shut that down immediately. "He knew the boy's name," she said, voice cracking. "That wasn't a dream." They stayed for a while, talking quietly with her in the living room. I sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, staring at the stairs. The whole time I felt like someone was still watching, still waiting. My mom arrived shortly after. She hugged me so tight it hurt. She didn't speak during the drive home. She just kept glancing in the rearview mirror like she expected someone to be there. When we got home, she checked every door, every window, locking everything twice. I slept in her room for the next week. But here's the part that never made sense. The part I didn't learn until years later. When I was 16, I visited Mrs. Hale again. We were talking at her kitchen table when she suddenly said, I never told you the full truth about that night. She looked older now, tired. I heard it too, she whispered, before you ever screamed. I froze. She continued, when someone knocked the first time, I heard him say something. My stomach dropped. What did he say? She looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear. He said he was here for you. The room went cold. What exactly did he say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She swallowed, eyes shining with memory. He said, tell him to let me in. My skin crawled. I asked her why she didn't tell me then. She shook her head. Because I didn't want you to be afraid of your own home. I didn't want you looking at every door like it was waiting to open. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, because there was one last detail, one I remembered but never said out loud. When the man whispered my name through the door, it wasn't the first time I'd heard his voice. It sounded exactly like a man who used to walk past our house when I played outside. A man who always looked at me too long. A man my mom always told me not to talk to. A man we later learned moved away, almost a year before that night. So whoever knocked for me, whoever whispered my name, whoever asked me to open the door, he wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that house. Sometimes late at night, when the rain hits my windows just right, I hear that memory in my head again. The calm knocking, the low voice, the patient whisper. Knock, knock, knock. Open up, please. Tell him to let me in. And the worst part, every few years, just once, I hear a soft tapping near my front door at night. Never loud, never urgent, just patient, waiting. And yet, every night since, the footsteps still stop outside my door.